Chapter 29 Disintegrating Family. Mehmed returned to Izmir in August 1939 for his wedding. Muazzez and Ali arrived from Ankara, adding grandeur to the little house. I never saw Mehmed married, for the day before I was ordered to a manoeuvre and had to leave all the bustle and the excitement behind me. The manoeuvre lasted 10 days, and when I returned home, I was unutterably shocked, for my grandmother had left us for good, returning to Istanbul with Mehmed and Bedia. My Batman was in hospital. It had previously been arranged in the family that when my grandmother went to live with my brother and his wife, my mother would go to Muazzez in Ankara. My grandmother would never have left us at all, but for the fact that Mehmed was more often away at sea than he was at home. It was felt to be unwise to leave the youthful Bedia unchaperoned. Perhaps this chaperonage would be quite unnecessary in other countries, but to leave Bedia at 17 alone in Istanbul, where scandal, false or true, needs but the slightest flicker to grow into a roaring flame, was unthinkable. There were far too many traps for unwary young wives in Istanbul. When the arrangement was originally suggested, my mother professed herself pleased, telling me in confidence that she had perhaps lived too long with my grandmother, and that living in Ankara would be good for her. It was therefore a surprise for me to return to Izmir and find her still there, and that she was alone in the house made it seem far worse. "Where's the servant?" I asked. "I dismissed her. She was lazy," returned my mother, who hereto had always extolled her. My mother herself was in a terrible state. I trembled when I thought of the heartless criminality that had left her alone in that echoing house. She was unwashed, uncombed, slatternly, and worst of all, she was unaware of this. I cursed Mehmed for having done such a thing, but could scarcely blame the flighty Muazzez, who was always too much concerned with her own affairs to have bothered very much when my mother refused to accompany her. I inquired for my Batman and was told that he had gone to hospital. She started to complain in a high, whining voice of the maid she had dismissed, and all the time her hands were twisting, busily rending a lacy handkerchief. She looked as if she had not eaten for days. The house was a shambles. Most of my grandmother's furniture had gone to Istanbul, and the few pieces that remained were pulled out from the walls. Beds were unmade, and the kitchen littered with the remains of meals, obviously several days old. I took her into the stuffy, airless salon and flung wide the windows. Here was a shambles too. It was heartbreaking to see my mother like this in this dirty, uncared-for house. "Why did you not go with Muazzez?" I asked her gently, and she stared at me for a moment or two, and then she replied, "And who would look after you if I had gone?" I bit back the searing retort that burned on my lips, and she said fretfully, "I told your grandmother not to look back when she left the house. I said that if she did, it would bring us bad luck. But she ignored me, and she stood at the corner looking back for a long, long time, and I had to shout to her to go, go, go." My mother's voice was high with hysteria, and I stirred uneasily, seeing the scene again through her eyes. The old woman leaning on her stick at the corner, looking back to a place where she had been happy, and my mother on the terrace shouting at her, attracting attention perhaps, my Batman trying to pull her back to the silent house. She watched me unwinkingly, trying to find out my reaction to what she was telling me. I said nothing. She had been silent for so long alone that talking was necessary to her now. "Your grandmother did not want to go. She said that I wanted to be rid of her. That is why she turned back when I told her not to, so that she could leave her curse on this house and everyone in it. I know," she nodded to me. "She hopes I will die." "Oh, mother," I said, wondering when this feud would cease between them. Still I could see the departing figure of my grandmother, and I wondered if we had done the right thing, we younger ones who had taught only to separate them, to keep them from fighting as they had done all through the years. I thought of my mother remaining here for me, and could not see her in the alien atmosphere of my sister's house in Ankara. I did not know what I could do with her now, when only I was left with her. I had tried to be good, but had failed somewhere, perhaps many years ago. I felt helpless sitting there, watching her. The others had shelved their responsibilities and had gone away, leaving us alone. The one thing I had always dreaded. When my Batman returned after a few days, the house was normal again, and I was glad to leave her in his hands each morning when I went to the aerodrome, knowing no harm would come to her. At the end of August, I was sent to Kayseri to bring back a new plane from my unit, but on September 3rd I received a telegram from the commanding officer ordering me to return immediately. War had again come to Europe, and Poland had been invaded, and all the lights of the world were going out again one by one. When I arrived at Eskişehir for refueling, I saw that all the planes were out of their hangars in the fields, tents were out in lorries, and I wondered if Turkey would come in and, more important, on whose side. I was told in Eskişehir that all leave had been cancelled, that all officers had now to remain in the aerodromes day and night. I took off for Izmir, wondering about my mother. Who would look after her now? At Izmir, excited friends crowded about me, but I could not listen to them. I sought out the commanding officer and begged him to relax the new rule for me, just for one night, as I was anxious about my mother. He knew of her illness and gave me permission to go home immediately, saying that if I should be wanted, he would send a car for me. When I got home, my mother appeared quite calm, greeted me affectionately, and said that she had heard over the radio that war had been declared. She also heard from neighbours that I should no longer be able to come home at night. I was relieved by her normality. During September, everything went all right, for my Batman was excellent with my mother, and I spoke to her each day by telephone. A new servant was engaged, and at first she spoke highly of her. Then the old dissatisfaction began to creep back to her voice, and she no longer seemed pleased with her. In October, my Batman was demobilised, having finished his military service. A new one came to take his place, and my mother hated him, telling me he was too stupid to do anything or understand half of what she said. I sent another one, and then another one, but they would not stay, and in any case she disliked all of them on sight. Then she threw the servant out, and she was now alone in the house with the dog. I was half frantic with anxiety, and would circle in my plane over the garden each day to see if she was all right. I wrote to Mehmed explaining the situation and suggesting that my mother go to his house in Istanbul, where at least she would not be alone. I managed to get home one day and discuss this with her. "Your grandmother is there," she said, "and perhaps we have missed each other more than we know, and anyway, I shall be back again in Istanbul." Mehmed replied promptly, saying that Bedia would be glad to have my mother with her and to send her immediately. Again I obtained leave, helped my mother to pack her things, and took her to Istanbul. Bedia welcomed her kindly and showed us the large airy room she had prepared for her. My grandmother only looked thoughtful, as though wondering how this ménage à trois would work out. Alone I returned to Izmir and went to the empty house and wondered what to do with the furniture that was left. The dog, Fidele, refused to eat his meals, all the time crying quietly to himself, watching me anxiously as though he was begging me to tell him what was the matter. Now and then he would pad softly to the door, sniffing the carpets, then would come dispiritedly back to me, flopping down beside my chair. My Batman brought dinner, and the silent room filled with ghosts. Fidele had followed me to the table, but he would not eat. He lay down, resting his nose on his paws, only moving to cock an ear if he heard a sound. He waited all the time for my mother to walk into the room, but she would not come here again. The house was given over to silence and the remembrance of all the unquiet things that had happened beneath its narrow roof.